It's an industrial group, it's an exporter, 1/3 of its business is in India. There's no better business group to talk to about the prospects for 2017 than Bharat Forge. And I have with me Baba Kalyani and Amit Kalyani. To both of you, a warm welcome. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Kalyani, on what you think 2017 is going to hold out. Now, I think the broad expectation is a lot of political volatility, thanks to Trump, thanks to Brexit, currency volatility because of all of that, and some degree of commodity price return, which may impact, input costs for industry across the board. What else would you add to the list?
No, I think you said it, you put it very well. Those are the kind of things that worry most businesses. We live in a highly volatile world. Now we got a lot of political volatility coming in, and it's not just the US elections or the Brexit. I think a lot more is
We've got
below the
elections
surface.
in many big countries in Europe.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we have all these things, and this is not very new, except what's happening in the US. Large part of this volatility is something that we've been facing for a reasonable period of time. And most of us, at least we have kind of tried to remodel our whole business model, reduce dependency on one geography or one product area or one end market, and try to broad base ourselves, and trying to bring as much of the new technology initiatives that are going around the world into our workplace, into our business. And even though 2017 overall is a challenging period, I think we see this as getting out of the trough and beginning to grow.
Okay. Q1, Q2, Amit, were tough for you,
Yes.
right? You saw big profit declines at the group, standalone quarter numbers I'm referring to. Q3, Q4, you're more confident that there will be a return to growth.
Yes.
You think that could sustain through 2017, given the context that Mr. Kalyani's laid out?
I think as of now, because of the volatility, visibility is not so long term, but Q3, Q4 will definitely be better. And based on what we have in the pipeline, I think next year will also be better than.
So you're talking FY18 or you're talking about calendar year 18?
Well, FY18.
So broadly, the
Yeah.
next 12 to 20 months look good,
Yes.
is what you're saying, right?
Definitely.
But if what President Trump or President-elect Trump is suggesting in terms of, the rollback of certain international trade measures, if what Davos calls protectionist populism, will increase through the course of this year, do you see the impact on international trade being significant enough to in fact hurt the bottom line of, a company like yours, a group like yours?
I mean, honestly, we don't see it right now.
Okay.
But I think, clearly the long-term message is clear. And that's one of the reasons why we have invested in manufacturing facilities in the US. Of course, we did it a little before the election
Elections.
results came out.
Yes.
But that has been our strategy. Our strategy has not been just to produce in India and sell. It's also to produce in countries where we see the markets.
Right.
So we have fairly strong manufacturing in Europe, and we now have a reasonable base in the United States, and we will grow this base as time comes along.
Okay. You did that through an acquisition. Is that going to be a core part of the strategy as you diversify both away a little bit more away from the auto focus in your business and from a geographical diversification point of view?
Yes, even before the U.S. elections, there has been a reasonable kind of demand for localized production.
Right.
Largely because supply chains are getting more complex. Pushing moving parts around the world from one place to another is not such an easy job anymore, and therefore, especially in the automotive sector, there has been a demand, and I think we are responding to this demand by creating a manufacturing base in the United States. We now have a facility,
Right.
a reasonable facility, and we will grow this facility, we will expand this facility, and I think that should reasonably take care of what we would like to do there.
Amit, you said Q3, Q4 looking better. Would you say that? So you might say that from a revenue growth point of view. Would you also say that from a margin point of view? Because in the last year or so, we've seen an across-the-board increase in commodity prices. This has impacted different industries in different ways. So I'm not suggesting that it's had the same impact on yours. But for instance, I was just talking to Asian Paints yesterday, and they were saying that November, December has been inflationary for them from a raw material price input point of view. Holding on to margins is becoming tougher.
I think in our case, margins will improve as the capacity utilization and revenue grows. So I think on that front, yes, we will see improvement in margins. And the commodity price growth in our sectors is just about starting.
Just starting.
Just about starting.
So you'll in fact see the pressure maybe 6 or 8 or 10.
But we also have, we also will work on mitigating some of that. We have long-term measures in place. Plus, there are pass-throughs. So it's a combination of factors which we will use to, maintain margins.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Kalyani, every time I've spoken with you about issues of policy in India, you've always been very, very candid. I'm going to put a question to you that most business leaders have tackled in politically correct ways. What do you make of this demonetization effort of the government? Whilst we all agree the intent probably is good, the fact that this was an unprecedented exercise managed in a, as many people say, not very good way, could have seriously dented India's growth prospects for the next 6 to 12 months.
I honestly don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. There's a lot of news about this whole process. I personally think, it was a very courageous decision that was made by the government, by the Prime Minister. And I think it's something that's going to do a lot of good to this country. It would have been impossible to make this decision 5 years from now. Okay? So I think, you have to look at this in a very different perspective. Everybody talks about, I don't see any queues on ATMs in Pune anywhere.
Anymore.
They don't have any cash.
No, I don't see any queues. I've talked to 5,000 of my employees, and nobody seems to have a problem. Yes, initially for a month there were difficulties, which was expected, but nobody seems to have a problem. If I look at all my truck operators who transport our products all around India, all their drivers now have cards, debit cards, to use for petrol or toll. So they have no issues in terms of cash transaction. So Indians are very innovative and they adapt to situations rather quickly. And I have visited a few rural areas, and there also I don't see such a big problem. I'm not saying there is zero problem, but I don't see such a big problem. I think history will say that this was the best thing that the government ever did.
Okay, fair enough. Interestingly, I was at a PwC conference last night, Amit, and they said that 71%, the highest proportion of CEOs anywhere in the world, in India, were very optimistic of growth, right? They asked other CEOs across the world, and many of them, 38%, said that this was going to be a very good year. But India didn't feature on anybody's investment list as a destination, at least not in the top 5. So people were picking US, UK, that's quite surprising given Trump and Brexit, China, Germany. For some reason, India didn't feature on that list. What is it that you're picking up from all the people you talk to here in Davos? Have we lost some of that luster? It may have nothing to do with demonetization,
No, I don't think it has anything to do with demonetization. One is that there has been demand growth issues, and the second is it's still at a state level in many states very difficult to get things done, to get investments on the ground, approval cycles. It does take a very long time. So people are going for where it's easier to do business.
And given the resurgence in growth in the US,
absolutely,
and the fact that despite Brexit, people think the UK has better prospects from an economic growth point of view, do you feel that the next 2 years India will lose out substantially on FDI? Because it is, at the end of the day, foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment we've been relying on. Private investment within the country hasn't really picked up.
But the government also is not just going to sit quiet and allow these things to happen. They are continuously going to tweak their reform process. They're continuously
But Mr. Kalyani, how do you explain every month or every quarter we see private investment falling even further? In fact, industry seems jammed with extra supply, NPAs, I mean, name it. And, that
But
problem is on the
that's the
list.
story of not today. That's the story of last 1.5 years.
Sure.
And as Amit said, the real issue is, we don't have demand. Now, where are you going to create demand in
Kickstart
India?
demand.
Well, if you look at India's industrial sector, you need infrastructure, rapid investments in infrastructure. Now, why are they not happening in infrastructure? Because infrastructure, the states get involved in implementing, whether it's rules connecting with land, whether it's
Environmental.
changes, whether it's flexibility. I mean, today you can't have a plan that you put into the system 15 years ago and say that I'm going to do exactly what I said 15 years ago. Life has changed very dramatically in 15 years. Okay? And life is changing almost every month with the way technology is changing.
Absolutely.
So we need governments, we need the states to be flexible. They need to figure out how they're going to create their internal processes of paperwork. Everybody says they have a single window. That single window is equal to about 150 windows.
Like a black hole.
1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 1.
So, although we have got this done at the center, I mean, at the central government, everything works absolutely well. There is no issue, there is no delays. Matter of fact, things happen extremely fast. But the problem is, many of these things require the states to come online.
So the implementation happens in the states.
And the
Fair
states are just not online. I mean, you look at power tariffs. Now, the general rule is industry is the largest consumer of power, so charge them more and more money. Now, whether that makes industry competitive or not competitive, nobody's bothered.
Yeah, fair enough. So then the conventional wisdom that this budget that will be presented, and which has many firsts to it, first time, in the beginning of Feb, first time railway budget coming into it, this budget should not necessarily focus on fiscal stimulus, because it's not that we need more money being thrown at the problem. That's probably not going to resolve the issue of whether it's NPA, kickstarting demand, taking care of additional supply, putting private investment to work. That's not going to be the solution.
It reminds me of 2008. When we had the global financial crisis, when the Lehman Bank went down, it was end of September 2008. And I distinctly remember, worldwide, the manufacturing industry just went off a cliff. Worldwide. Starting from the United States, then went to Europe, came to India, China, everywhere else. And everybody was wondering how, I mean, even we went from 100 to 20.
Yeah.
Okay, whether it was domestic demand or global demand, it really didn't matter. How did India come back on track very quickly in 2009? It came back on track because a 60,000 crore fiscal stimulus was put in a couple of different buckets. Okay, and in our industry, I still remember the bucket. There were some 40,000 buses that were ordered under the, JNURM program.
JNRM.
And suddenly it revived the CV industry, and with that it revived the automotive, it revived the parts industry. So you need, when something is not going right, the whole world is doing fiscal stimulus.
So you're batting for a fiscal stimulus?
I'm not backing for fiscal stimulus. I think it is a part of a policy tool that needs to be used when you have such problems.
Even if it comes at the cost of fiscal discipline. So this year's fiscal deficit target is 3.5. The expectation for next year was 3. Many people now, you read all the brokerage reports, they're saying they expect Finance Minister Jaitley to stick to 3.5 for next year. So that's about a 50 basis point slip.
Yeah, but you must also remember that one of the good things that is going to come out of the demonetization exercise is that next year you're going to have many more taxpayers than you had this year. Okay, so hopefully the tax base will increase and the tax collections will go up. So, and that's the gut feel that many people have.
So you're expecting a budget that counts on more tax revenue, therefore is willing to put more public spending to work, irrespective of the fact that so far public spending has not spurred private spending.
I would like to see more expenditure, public plus private. Private right now is, I think, a little bit into a difficult situation because of the NPAs and the whole gridlock that we have created in the system. So I think it will have to come out of public expenditure, but it needs to get into productive, efficient infrastructure creation.
Yeah.
We can't have expenditures that go in and then for next 10 years the projects are lingering around.
So you're saying not as much social spends as it is infrastructure or
Yeah,
investment
India needs
spends.
infrastructure. We need more roads. The more efficient we can make India as a country, the faster you can travel, the higher broadband that you can have, and everything else that infrastructure can provide, that country, India, will become a far more prosperous country.
But even sectors like mass housing and
Are big
are
boosters.
big
Yeah.
boosters of the economy. In fact,
Undoubtedly.
construction sector is one of the biggest boosters, and you would do a social good.
Yeah.
That doesn't even require government to spend. That only requires states
Clarity of
to
policy.
have clarity of policy.
Well, okay, that's a little outside the ambit of this budget, unfortunately for us. So, okay, one final question then to both of you. I want to see how you quantify the risks for the year. So, Amit, I'll start with you first. If you had to pick 3 of the most challenging business situations you're going to run into in 2017, because we haven't yet discussed Fed and currency, but we've discussed that to death for the last 5 years. So, what would those 3 be?
It's actually uncertainty around anything. So whether there's going to be any change in demand, whether there's going to be any political instability which leads to that, or anything to do with tariffs and stuff like that which could lead to any uncertainty. These are the 3 areas that I think are of biggest concern.
Mr. Kalyani, 3 opportunities that you think 2017, despite all the gloom and doom around it, could bring. I know you said you're looking to be more acquisitive from a geography point of view. So that will continue. Will there be large acquisitions or, like you mentioned, mid-size, small-size?
We like to make small
Fair
acquisitions,
enough.
mid-size acquisitions. I think, to me, the biggest opportunity is that you just need to believe in India. You need to believe that that country is going to grow. You need to believe that the manufacturing sectors need to grow, and you need to position. At least that's what we are doing.
It's an opportunity we've been waiting for,
Doesn't
many,
matter.
many years now.
It doesn't matter, but we are not at zero level. Okay, we could have grown faster. We are not growing as fast, but we are still growing. We are making a few steps, but that's an opportunity. And this is also an opportunity where you need to create technology. Now, how many Indian companies create technology? So that's one. Second, I think irrespective of what is happening around the world with the volatility and everything, world trade is not going to become zero.
Yeah, well, let's hope not.
and then
Let Xi Jinping, I think, stand up in defense of globalization. Who would have thought of that?
Who would have thought of
right?
that?
Exactly.
Who would have thought that a
Exactly.
Chinese president would
Exactly.
come to Davos, like the heart of capitalism, and stand up in favor of globalization? So, yes.
So
All
I
the
think
things are set to happen.
I think you have to be more optimistic. Yeah, we are facing a lot of headwinds in terms
Globally,
of global
whole world.
economy.
Yeah.
We are facing a lot of volatility and uncertainty because of the geopolitical and social situation. The middle class is unhappy everywhere. I mean, those are real things in life, and obviously they are going to generate policy responses in each geography or each area, depending on what the socio-political system
Situation
demands.
is there, yeah.
So it's pretty much what we do in India too. But at the same time, 80% of economic growth in the world comes from the emerging markets.
So you
Okay,
think-
only 20% of the global growth comes from the developed world.
Right. Okay. So what you've told me, to summarize in 2 lines, is that emerging markets will continue to be in prime focus for the next 12 to 24 months, and that you see growth making a strong comeback even in India in the next 6 to 10 months at least in your business.
Next 1 year, yeah.
All right. On that optimistic note, thank you so much, Ms. Kalyani, for joining us on Bloomberg Quinn.
Thank you
Amit,
so
thank
much.
you very
Thank
much.
you.